Real genius comes out of that naturalness, the thing you do when no one's watching, the thing that is like air to you. What did you do that got you made fun of? There's something magical there. If we had more permission as a society that it's okay to make mistakes, it'd be less odd to be weird. It would start to be the natural state of things again. Why we attract people and experiences into our lives. Attraction is pulling out what we need to look at, heal, love. But really, I attracted those challenges and gifts into my life so I could see and love who I am, the intelligence of who I am, instead of always just reacting or running away from my patterns. So I started to literally lock the door and dance with my shadows. The Gene Keys found me at the right moment where suddenly there was this poetic map, a language, a shadow, a gift, and an enlightened city. If this is a dream, if this is a game, how do I want to play my life a little bit differently?
So I'm really curious to know, well, first, what feels alive for you right now in your world, in your life, in your work?
Well, I've been deep in the Gene Keys, which is one of my main bodies of work. We just launched a big retreat, so it's kind of like swirling all around me, which is kind of the magic, is just whatever I bring my attention to, synchronicities start to blossom open. So I'm at a threshold in my life, I think, where
Mm.
some old big projects are finally brewing and birthing, which feels exciting, but I'm often a aspirant. So I always kind of look at the next mountain, and I'm learning to practice to actually just enjoy where I am at in the process right now.
Mm. Where are you at in that process?
Yeah, it feels like this spring is, I keep seeing like the eye of the needle, this like Pharaoh's needle of a project that I've probably brewed for decades of my life, that came as a game of life that came through all these different forms before I ever met the Gene Keys even. And now it's coming into the Gene Keys, and it's a just fun, inspiring ways for people to bring magic back into their everyday life and see themselves with a bit of playful curiosity. And so in this version, it'll come out as an app later this year, but really it's weaving writings and symbols and sacred geometry and gamification of our life in a new way. So that's what's brewing
Wow.
with me.
And that's been decades in the making.
Yeah, it's kind of put me on my path of discovery many, many years ago. Of kind of woke up one day feeling like life is a lucid dream. I had practiced lucid dreaming my whole life, and I had weird hippie parents. So I grew up with astral projection and running past lives. So I kind of
Well,
was
you're one of the
able.
lucky ones. Growing up with hippie parents, so cool. You were just primed for all of this. Yeah.
It's funny because now I feel like such a muggle, having grown up so magical for so long. It's like actually like some simplicity and some different grounding, and but really that's what I love, right? Is like, where does magic and mundane, our moon dance of this world,
Mhm.
actually meet? But games have always been that synchronicity for me of, oh, actually, if this is a dream, if this is a game, how do I want to play my life a little bit differently? How can I maybe enact my mythos instead of just waiting for something to finally click, or for you to find my purpose out there?
Mhm.
So yeah, the game of life is one of those archetypes that sticks with me.
Very cool. So how does this all tie into Gene Keys? I know you've been on this journey with Gene Keys for like 12 years, I think it said on your website. That's pretty
Yeah,
long. So
I
like
think it's
how did
15
this
now. It's wild to
Oh,
think about.
really? So I'm really curious, what was life like prior to Gene Keys and then, that unfolding and now? How did it shape you?
Yeah, I was studying and then living life as art, life as magic. So I was in a grad school program that was about using art making as a transpersonal activation, and for healing, for cultivation, for expression, not just as art to put on a wall or to put on a music out, art as a living practice of alchemy. And I lived in art and music communities, so I was kind of breathing that part of my reality. And I'd studied brainwave science and brainwave entrainment and, neurofeedback and trying to find these digital ways to access flow states and meditation and heightened states of awareness. And then I kind of left all that. I went deep in the jungle for many months at a time. I've kind of went into breath work and yoga and all these different practices. And the Gene Keys found me at the right moment where suddenly there was this poetic map that mirrored so many revelations I was having in my own healing process as a human. And it was also having that relationship with many other people. And suddenly
Mm.
there was a language that was like, oh, we could use these archetypes of a shadow, a gift, and an enlightened city to actually talk about what's going on as roommates or, with the dishes or what's going on in my healing when I'm dealing with something from a long family wound that's finally coming to surface. And I had never really found a language that felt like words were really articulating sometimes impossible to articulate feelings. And like when you read the book, when something hits so real that it's like you wrote it in the future about
Mhm.
yourself, it was like those kinds of moments where I was like, okay, this is exciting to explore. And then I just kept playing with it for years and it kept giving me gems.
Yeah. How did it change the way you see shadows, if you even defined it as a shadow before then?
Yeah, I don't know if I had the word shadow until I met the Jinkies. Obviously, I'd probably encountered it with like Jungian psychology and stuff. So I
Mhm.
was aware of shadow work maybe. And I think what it changed was that for probably the first time, I was seeing someone say, don't throw it away, don't get rid of it, don't fix it, but that there really is a gift in the frequency, that it's actually not a different thing. The shadow, the gift, and the city, they're one band of consciousness, of intelligence. And that was kind of mind blowing to say, oh, okay, well, now it's just my relationship with this energy instead of if I fix it and I do the right technique and I, do the right breath work or I see the right therapist, I'll finally fix myself. Instead, it was, oh, there's fuel in this
Uh-huh.
shadow. And because it was able to articulate maybe examples in genetics, like whole gene pools and whole societies, I could see it not just as my own issues. Because sometimes it's hard when we're really focused on our own problems. We don't really see it in the context of the tapestry of the whole.
Mhm.
Oh, this is what greed, one of my shadows, this is what greed means for society. And then that helped me see it in myself a little bit better. Because at first I was like, I'm not greedy, I don't I'm a very generous person, but
Mhm.
I got to see what does greed mean for recognition? What does greed mean for time? Where should I be a little more greedy? It gave me
Mhm.
some fuel to actually be with those words and those experiences. And that's why I kind of stuck with it for so long is it gives a framework to then be in relationship with the shadow.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you're speaking to something really important that most people will approach shadow work from this perspective of I need to fix it or even transcend it, which is that language in spiritual spaces. It's like, no, it's actually all about creating a relationship with it. And
100%.
yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception. And it's so important to weave that in. And so, is there anything you like to say about what that would look like, maybe practically? And we can
Yeah,
maybe tie in here contemplation if it fits.
definitely. I like what you said about kind of that spiritual bypass is what we started to see. Especially, I was in the craziest woo woo West Coast culture for many years, and I love it. There's so much expansive heart and possibility, and we are these infinite creatures. But when you start to bypass the nitty gritty, like, actually, I hurt you when I said that, or when I did that action, or I actually feel really impacted by something that's happening, and wait a minute, it's not just that you insulted me or you cheated on me. Actually, this is an old wound that I've been carrying and replicating in my habits and my addictions and the way that I talk. I need to look at that and explore that. And instead of it being hyper serious all the time of, okay, exercise the demon, get all that out. There's this kind of journey in my life of, oh, catharsis will fix it. Oh, I can just scream it all out and it'll all be done. But grief and anger, these things don't just go away just because you you're done with it. And so contemplation was like, oh, this is a technique to say, let me accept, allow, and embrace this energy, actually bring it into, like, let myself be in my body with the feeling. So on a practical level, it made me work with stress or fear. Suddenly, I wasn't trying to get rid of the stress or the fear. I was learning to ease into the feeling and realize actually it's my body communicating something that I wasn't really allowing myself to feel or hear the lesson inside it. And, it helps in arguments and it helps in crisis. It slows me down just long enough so that I don't just immediately project and blame it right back on you or the other person or,
Mhm.
and sometimes I do. Of course, we're humans. We blow up all the time. That's a
Mhm.
part of the expression. But now I'm in a relationship. I'm in a dance with that shadow. So I started to literally like lock the door and dance with my shadows. It was like, okay, I am going through pain based on a relationship dynamic. How can I meet this energy in my body and feel it instead of waiting for that other person to say they're sorry or for them to finally realize blah, blah, blah?
Mhm.
I needed to have my back inside those relationship challenges. And I think that was my entry point to the real shadow work is relationship, because what else, drives us to the edge of our
Mhm.
comfort zone. So,
There's nothing like relationships to just confront you with a mirror to look at yourself. What can we learn about ourselves through the Venus sequence and relationships?
I mean, that's the juiciest part, right? The Venus sequence is not only am I going on a journey of love that may have intimate partners out there, like it may have impact with other people, but really I'm going on this inner journey to see my triggers, my
Mm.
defense systems, my mythical innocent heart that's been like dumped on by all of like conditioning and growing up and forgetting how beautiful we actually are. And also getting into like why we attract people and experiences into our lives. It's not to because we did something wrong, but the magic of attraction reminding us that attraction is pulling out what we need to look at, heal, love in greater and greater amounts. And so it might attract a promiscuous partner, or it might attract a distant partner who doesn't feel like they're really connecting with me. And maybe there's healing that will happen, and suddenly those two people can be together in a different way. But really, I attracted those challenges and gifts into my life so I could see and love who I am. I could understand the intelligence of who I am instead of always just reacting or running away from my patterns. And so the Venus sequence is for me, it's a really like holy journey because it takes me on a ride when I open that particular portal in myself because it makes me look at some of the darkest wounds and really feel, wow, this is where I judge myself in every interaction. This is where I am one of my own worst enemies. Even when someone's telling me they love me or someone's giving me the support, to watch the subtle and not so subtle ways that we collapse and control inside ourselves, but also the greatest superpowers of our love. The Venus sequence ends up being a map, not just of my wounds, but of my superpowers in relationship, my shamanic, loving
Mhm.
relationship power.
Do you think that, some people go through these phases in their life where they're maybe avoiding relationships? Let's say they've been burned, they're in like a hermit phase. What do you think about that in terms of are they avoiding the confronting these shadowier aspects that might come up in a Venus sequence? Because I feel like when you're with yourself, you can feel so good. I'm just like really in ease and just in flow. And then you get into a relationship and it's like stuff starts coming up that you maybe thought you were done dealing with.
Totally. I mean, there's that age old, like, if you think you're enlightened, go visit family. If you think you're
Yeah,
enlightened,
exactly.
get into a relationship. Like, it's going to stir stuff up, right? That's part of the beauty is that interacting stirs things up. And I think we have to be really careful with, like, where am I at in my cycle? Maybe right now, maybe I've been addicted to the intensity of breakup, breakthrough, like finally have that moment with someone. that can be an addiction, right? We go on those like cycles. And then, like you said, there could be an addiction sometimes to the comfort of, I don't want to rock the boat. I'm finally safe. And I think we constantly need to ask our bodies, the intelligence of our bodies, what is the most beneficial thing for me right now? Because sometimes it is just hermiting and safety and turning inward.
Hmm.
Relationship isn't the goal, healing and transformation and beauty, like those should be the goals, right? And if
Hmm.
right now relationship doesn't feel safe in my body, I should listen to that. But it shouldn't be a distraction from the deeper healing. Healing doesn't have to happen only in like crisis. In fact, I found the real deepest lasting healing happens with gentleness. And gentleness takes courage to not just leap to the next thing.
Yeah. Can you say more about the gentleness and what that maybe looks like for you or how you approach that?
Yeah, I think that's for me like my highest virtue I want to see in the world is kindness and gentleness again, and how that's reflected in my own inner thought process. I mentioned judgment earlier. That's one of my gene keys. My core wound is judgment. And
Is
so I
that
judge
18?
others. Yeah, 18. Do you have
Okay, yeah.
18?
No, I have 58 in my life's work. And then, oh, where I have 58 twice, I think. I don't have 18, which is like,
The
there's
other
a channel
channel.
connection there. Yeah. Yeah. I attract people with 18.
Mhm. Totally.
Makes
And there's
sense.
that dissatisfaction and judgment, just like they can bang heads against each other, and it
Mhm.
and then you get stuck. And like dissatisfaction's another good one. Like constantly feeling the grind of that dissatisfaction can wear down the soul, wear down the like the want to get back up and do this thing called love.
Totally.
So gentleness is critical, right? Is okay, instead of pushing more dissatisfaction, being dissatisfied with my dissatisfaction, judging my judgment, being stressed by my stress, we're constantly just grinding because we're taught, usually, especially by Western kind of culture and social media and everything, it's like grind culture in our souls, not just in money, but like get up and do better and don't feel that way, and you should live your best life every single second of every single day. And your best life is not 1,000% on. That's not our best life.
Mhm.
Our best life is natural, and nature goes through cycles. And gentleness isn't just like softness. I mean, of course, it has an element of softness, but I think often we think of gentle as the opposite of strong. And I think
Mm.
really choosing gentleness, even in moments that need decisiveness, like, okay, we have to move. There's a fire happening. I can still make that choice of decisiveness with gentleness in my heart. And that's the practice, is like, okay, in times of struggle, heartbreak, health crisis, existential worry about the world,
Mhm.
if I can meet that worry with the softness and love, and gentleness isn't giving up, relaxation is not giving up, and giving up doesn't help me relax or be gentle. It's a
Mhm.
very active process of choosing to be soft with that energy, especially in a world that often gives us very little gentleness, except for maybe codependent gentleness that then wants a price tag later. So I would just
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. It's a good point. It's making me think of Gene Key 52, this collective field of stress that I think in the book it describes it like this skin really, um, like surrounding Earth, and then also with gentleness, there has to be a level of embodiment, right? Like there has to be some kind of space or connection with the body for that to come in, and then that just I don't know how that ties into 52 or what my question is, but that those are just the two things that I was thinking of.
really resonate with that. I mean, 52, the stress, it's where we don't breathe, right? So the gift is
Mhm.
restraint, which is a funny word to have like as a superpower, but it is actually this. In the I Ching, it's called the keeping still mountain, the mountain of appreciation and the heart vibration of stillness. stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the embrace of the beauty of this moment. Restraint isn't the absence of creativity. It's the paintbrush that's like a millimeter from the canvas and the magic that happens when it waits for the right moment to ignite, the paint on the canvas. So these moments of gentleness isn't just about, I think you're right about it has to be with the body, because we have to be able to breathe and choose softness for gentleness to really enact itself.
Yeah. Were you going to say something else?
No, I was just actually really just appreciating what you just said, because I'm feeling how gentleness is a conscious choice in this
Yeah.
conversation, and that helps me, because that's why I think I love it so much. Is it's magical acts, in my opinion, are acts that we use our intention to create more beauty, to
Mm-hmm.
reveal the beauty that was already there. But we choose it. We're players. We're magicians. We're active and agent. And so I love that gentleness requires my consciousness. Now, we can
Mm-hmm.
also be gentle in our default behavior. That's a beautiful thing. But I think it's really more that, in general, I know me as a human, and I think us as humans have been sick, and we haven't really been choosing gentleness for a long time, especially
Yeah.
internally in those relationship dynamics to ourself, which then replicate in how we hurt others.
Yeah. I think this brings up a conversation around like, how do you even access choice? Because I feel like choice is something that you have to access, but that ties into the embodiment and the space, right? And if you're
Yeah.
living in constant stress and you are just maybe plugged into the collective nervous system, it's becomes almost impossible to feel like you have choice. It's like you're just on autopilot running these old programs. So I'm wondering if maybe someone's listening to this and they're like, I feel like I'm there. I feel like every time I try to change or choose something different, I can't. So what would you say to to that person?
Yeah. I think that's exactly it. Is we have to pause from all of this cycling inside ourselves. Okay, it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. So we run to the next thing. We flip to the next video. We just feel the anxiety, but we kind of wallow, and wallowing isn't allowing. Right? So like when you pause, you turn off the external media. Okay, something's coming up for me and I choose to breathe with it. That's my choice. Breath is so cool about that. Like our breath happens all the time, whether we choose it or not, but we can choose to breathe more deeply. And that's
Mhm.
fun. We immediately have something that we get to control, even if we can't control what happens to our, the weather and the things outside of us and people's decisions that we can't stop. So finding that agency is one thing. And for me, the other secret ingredient is imagination, fun, myth, is
Mhm.
like adventure. Is it's not, you have to want to do this work of transformation. And so I like to bring in, what superheroes, what fantasy, wizards, what magic makes you happy, what excites your body a little bit, and then learning to actually bring that energy in when you pause.
Mhm.
And so like, if the one that happened right now was, if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings, they have the Minas Tirith, this like white tree. And I remember
Mm.
just seeing this breastplate of this white tree. And I learned in a Qigong class that like the white energy of breath would help with my grief. My first wife at the time had died very suddenly. And I learned like breathing into this white tree in my chest. And by using that imagination and that playfulness, I would remember more often, so that when I felt that grief, I could breathe into this white tree of like a hero, of something that made me feel like it was worth battling for love in this
Mm.
universe and not to give up. And so it's silly sometimes, but I think that's that playfulness that we lost, many of us put away when we were, as we grew up, that actually is the secret ingredient to making some of these changes that we want to see in the outer world take time. So we have to practice and have the courage and the playfulness to keep practicing. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
It makes so much sense. The way that I'm hearing this too, the way that I'm understanding this is, play allows for integration. right? And grief, I really want to talk about grief for a moment, if that's okay. I have personal experience with grief as well. I mean, who doesn't, right? But for me, it was dance, and dance is a playful act, right? I mean, that's kind of how I see it. Even though maybe I'm crying while I'm dancing, it doesn't look very playful, but it is. Is there a gene key for grief?
Hmm.
And thank you for sharing that about your first wife, by the way. That was vulnerable. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, grief changes. I mean, we all do have grief, but I think when you really open a portal of grief, and at some point in our life, we all face deaths, we face health crisis, we face, turmoil. It would never take away my own grief. Now, I probably
Yeah.
would have wanted that in the first few years of feeling, but really it helped me become the person that I am. And the reason why I don't think there's a gene key of grief, but one of the aspects of the gene keys that I love in the line 4, which is about the breath and about the heart and about softening. And the thing
Mm,
I learned about grief was that, grief is love. The fact that we lose someone or we lose ourselves or we lose the moment, the fact that we grieve means we love, means we care, means we feel. And that breath it can be very sweet, even in its sorrow. And I learned in my own like healing process with that particular death was that I won't ever cry out all the tears of the ocean of grief. It doesn't go dry. I can't be done with grief. I need to be in relationship, like we've been talking about with the shadow. I need to be in relationship with grief and the cycles. And then, then you grieve, in a larger grief process, you freak out because you're happy for the first time after periods of grief. And that really challenges the system to wait a minute. But now I thought I was endlessly sad and I was never going to get out of this hole. So
mhm,
we have to pay attention to the waves of grief. And that's why in the Gene Keys, the line 4, it's about softening and not being stuck in our numbness or our rejection pattern. Oh, I'll reject that feeling so that I'm safe. That's a
mhm,
common thing I think we do. We build these walls and numbness just is like, oh, I don't feel anything. I'm fine. Fine is a great word for that.
mhm,
And really underneath fine is usually a wellspring of grief. And it doesn't have to be for someone who died. It can, or it's, I mean, honestly, we're all grieving just by being alive on this planet, right?
totally. Yeah, totally. I think it's so important to see that because then you just see the interconnectedness of everything and also just that how affected we are by our ancestral line and what's going on collectively. Um, I'm curious if you've experienced this with your grief. I still don't know if I have the words to describe it, except I did come across something called ecstatic grief, which explained this experience I had. And I was like, oh my God, that is the closest thing that I can use to explain what I was experiencing. Thematically, like I was just really going into my grief. And I felt like for a moment, it didn't stay there very long, but for a moment, kind of, it was like ecstasy. The grief didn't go away though. The ecstasy was holding the grief. Um, it was really odd and really great. It was, it was a cool experience. Does this bring up anything for you?
Absolutely. It's incredible that like any emotion eventually opens that portal to ecstasy, to
Mm,
bliss. I mean, your Jinky 58 right there. Like here's energy of that grief opens the doorway into the vibration of
yeah.
bliss. And I think
Mhm.
part of that for me is just that continual proof. I can't prove it scientifically, but I know on a cellular level that our core fundamental self is bliss. And a lot of stuff gets piled on top of that. And so usually it's something like either dedicated practice, like the yogis and the ecstatics that go really deep into a practice, or it's someone that has a really deep challenge. Those are
Mhm.
two pathways that people choose in this life of I'm gonna find the bliss, I'm gonna seek it, or life breaks me open and I remember that we are that bliss. And I think there's a beauty that grief is one of those universal portals where many people fall into that. And I don't want to romanticize the suffering that also happens in
Mhm.
real deep grief.
Mhm.
But like you said, I loved how you said the ecstasy was holding the grief.
Mhm.
What if allowing all vibration, all frequency of that experience, not doesn't get rid of the shadow, doesn't get rid of the suffering, but it realizes actually that suffering is held in grace. That's a powerful portal,
Mhm.
I think.
Yeah. And mind you, this was after like a 48 hours of literal, like just on my knees kind of moment, like grief. So I feel like I just surrendered to it in that moment. And I was
And
like,
that's
okay, I just accepting this fully.
And that's the hard work that it takes, right? It's like the
Yeah.
agony is a part of that hero's journey, and that's why we can't skip those. That's where I think that bypass, what we were talking about earlier, you can't skip that journey of the physical journey. The physical body takes slower than our mind and consciousness, right? Like consciousness moves quicker than the speed of light. Oh, I know there's ecstasy at the end of this portal, but that does not stop the body, the physical world that goes through its chemical and emotional and physiological
Mhm.
changes. And so I think it's sometimes we try to skip to the ending of the good of a book, and it's like, no, no, no. The journey of that ecstasy was forged in those hours of agony. And sometimes
Mm.
it's beautiful to remember that that's why we use the city and the gene keys. That highest word is like, I'm not enlightened at all. I'm not perfect. I'm not all beauty. I'm not bliss, but I can drink in the remembrance that bliss is a possibility inside this vibration. And I can't rush the process, but I can be comforted, like that ecstasy holding the grief. And now that's kind of my practice is I've had enough experiences of breakdown, breakthrough like that, that when stuff really hits the fan and it gets very hard, my cells remember, yeah, you've been through portals like this before, and there is grace here. So even if my mind's not ready or I'm not feeling the happiness that can come at the end, there's something in me that trusts. And I think a lot of people haven't yet maybe had that breakthrough. And so that's where it's like sending out resonance and gratitude. It's just saying, actually, there are many people who found grace through that portal of, for me, it was disease and death. Those were the two things in my life that broke me down to absolute pain. This just broke me down into atoms. And I
Mm.
discovered compassion, this infinite hallway of Buddhas glistening in the diamonds of compassion. I'm not a Buddhist. I didn't pray for that. I mean, maybe I prayed for it as like a soul level
Mhm.
yearning for some purpose of my pain. But the breakthrough now becomes a ground that I can remember inside any other breakdown that I have. And it ends up being compassion, love, compassion, grace. And it is an ecstatic feeling because ecstasy takes it all in. Ecstasy loves pain. Ecstasy loves joy. Ecstasy loves all the emotions. It's the vibration of all of them combining. Even just like a child that can laugh and then fall down and start crying and then get right back up and laugh again. That's our true nature, in my opinion.
I love that. I love that so much, and it almost kinda looks crazy, right? That a child like, if we were to live like that as humans, I feel like people would be like, "This person's all over the place," but it's like, no. You can actually just feel your emotions fully, move through them, and then just move on, in a sense. That's not the right wording, but I think you get what I'm
No,
saying.
well, yeah, like flow, yeah, man, move on. Honestly, I love like, can we give each other more permission of like, I'm gonna have a full on breakdown, breakthrough right here, and we can just witness each other instead of then,
Mhm.
oh, but she said that thing when she was in this cathartic state, and now that's all I'm thinking about, and I take it deep into my body, and I can't let go. And
Mhm.
and I think ecstasy is a lot about that flow, that river flowing through. And again, this doesn't mean to be unkind with our words. It doesn't excuse bad behavior, but it is about like giving each other the space to be like, I am a vibrant being. I don't think all the same things all the time. I am many voices, and giving
Mhm.
those voices room is, I think, really important.
Totally. Yeah, that makes me think of IFS. Have you ever heard of that?
I think so. This is internal family systems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, a friend of mine is
Yeah.
very deep in that incredible field. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite. I'm a therapist. It's my favorite approach. We have multiple different parts of us, and it's about creating relationship with them and listening to them and being with whatever it is that they're experiencing and the different beliefs that are there and all of that. I'm really curious. What gene keys in your evolution? Because you mentioned disease and death, and disease and stress or death.
Disease and death were my like portals of grief, right?
Yes.
But 53 is my evolution.
What's 53?
Immaturity is the shadow. To expansion is the gift. To
Mm.
superabundance is the city.
Cool. So for this city, do you think we're at a space collectively where people are experiencing that level of the gene key? What do you think
Think
about
a little bit of a cynic. I'm more interested in the shadow to gift relationship
that?
because I think that when we think we are the city, we are the farthest from the city.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But are we glimpsing it and are we tasting it?
Mm,
Absolutely. And that's really like the bliss that you experience, the ecstasy, like that was always there. That's the real truth for me of the city is it's not the enlightened state out there. It's the base frequency. So yeah, of course I do actually genuinely believe because I've had moments of absolute ecstasy, not caused by any other external experience other than probably emotion and physiologically being present, but it's spontaneous.
mhm,
And that gives me hope that there are these spontaneous moments of feeling that it is a little more real. But I think that often the city, even that word, it can sometimes be a trap of, oh, the divine superpower that's up there, out there, over there. And that usually comes with disassociation from the
mhm.
shadow that's actually needing a lot more attention than we're necessarily giving it. So I'm careful with that word of are we attaining these things?
Yeah.
But I do genuinely believe that we, of course, are given visions and glimpses of that feeling because that's who we are.
Mhm. I love that, the glimpse and the taste of it. I think that's right. Maybe we can talk about Gene Key 55 for a bit. Great change, right? From matter to spirit. So Gene Key 55 is apparently we're in this, it's triggering us collectively to wake up to this great change. How do you see that? Where do you think we're at with that? How's it unfolding?
Yeah, it's always a good question. I'm less the prophet than Richard and those that see that part of the great change because I think that we're obviously in a huge breakdown, and that gene key is called the Ring of the Whirlwind. And I think it's pretty clear we are in a whirlwind of breakdowns of systems. And the shadow is victimization, which is why it's one of the master keys and the gene keys is every shadow is a form of victimization, internally and externally. And our relationship with those victim thoughts is where we find the doorway to freedom, the gift and the city of that key. So when we're in this whirlwind, we're going to constantly see more and more reasons to be victimized. And that's like what you said of like the news and the oversaturation of media. I mean, even just in a great change concept, like this generation, the generations that are coming now, and we've grown up with technology, allowing us to see and hear and almost smell the suffering of people all over the planet. No humans have had the neurology to deal with literally knowing a tsunami is hitting someone else on the other side of the world. And it's being bombarded into our senses. So our physiological body is being asked to evolve its exploration to find freedom out of that victimized shadow. And I think that that's why we're seeing these global systems breaking down. And yet, there's always that spirit of humanity that wants this creative growth inside the wildfire. And that's where the shadow is always a seed. So we need some of this whirlwind, this purification, this breakdown energy in order to remember that despite the external circumstances, we individually and collectively are free and agents of that freedom becoming more real in our world.
Mhm.
That's what comes for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. It's so good and it's so true. It can be hard to see when you're watching, especially this week specifically, and well, these past few weeks. It almost feels like we're being asked to expand our capacity to hold the chaos, to be with the chaos from a physiological, like, nervous system perspective, because like you were saying, to be aware of like this tsunami that's coming. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but I heard somebody say this a while ago, and it really stuck with me because it feels true that our nervous system was not designed to be aware of what's even happening, like the tribe over. So to imagine all of that we're aware of and all the information we have access to it at our fingertips is kind of crazy. No wonder there's so much dysregulation and stress and all of this, and just feels like we're reaching our capacity for what we're able to be with. But at the same time, yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna go
And
on.
at the same
I feel
time,
a rant coming, but at the same time, I feel like there's this collective of people right now specifically, that is stepping into creator consciousness. Like all of a sudden, it just feels like there's this, and it's a weird divide. It almost seems because it's like feels weird to feel good and want to create when simultaneously so many people are suffering.
it's a critical relationship. Like we have to remember that creativity, love, compassion, kindness, growth, story, and building new reality is critical inside the tides of chaos.
Mm,
And it's very easy to fall into that victim mind. And this does not mean don't pay attention to the people being killed and dragged out into the streets next door. Act
mm,
with kindness and creativity and compassion and integrity. That's what the gift states are all for, is like we need that creative element. We don't just want to let the shadow be the shadow and people die and be and stolen and all these things. Like, no, you don't appease that vibration. You
mhm,
work with it and transform it into that creative gift. So we have to enter that creator consciousness. And I do think that we're at an edge of what we can process. I do think that the technology that we are, the individual human body and the intelligence of consciousness, we are one organism. I mean, that's not just a woo woo concept anymore.
mhm,
There's biological proof that
mhm,
we are an organism. So
mm.
we, at some level, have the capacity to feel the collectiveness without being overwhelmed by it. But the input that we've been using through our phones and through technology and through I'm sure many ways of corrupted communication, we're trying to process outside of ourselves with only the mind. And that, I think, is a dangerous pathway, to leads to unhealth and dysregulation. So
Mhm,
when you said the creator, I love that, of like, yeah, when that's why I loved living in community. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but it's also one of the most beautiful things you do when you're growing food and being with and
mhm.
creating art and music with people. You have to deal with all the complexities of being humans together. We're still going to have to figure out energy and resource management and all these things. That's not going to go away just because we love each other. But
Yeah.
by being creators inside it, we give ourselves the chance to do that with kindness and with creativity. And that is exciting and shouldn't be just thrown away because it's so serious out there. Yeah. Like, feel the pain, allow the
Mhm.
shadow, accept that that we are sick, and step into one of my shamanic teachers in Peru. The disease is the mother of who we are to become. So be with the sickness and
Mhm.
birth ourselves into who we're becoming. And that's what this great change is really birthing, is not some savior, but we get to become that new human with each other through understanding our sickness deeply.
Yeah. Yeah, when you said that, I thought about decomposition, creating from decay or creating life from what is shedding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When right now, when you said that, of just like this week, and it's just like, it's humans causing a lot of despair to other humans. So the
Mhm.
components that we're decomposing are really important components. And those forms that create hatred and division, they come from wounded people, being our wounds together. And I think that decomposition is such an important remembrance of like, we have to there's no getting out of this organic cycle. Even when I die, my organic components will still be here recycling in this beautiful earth. That decomposition's going to happen. Entropy is going to happen.
Mhm.
And rebirth is going to happen in one way or another. We just get to participate if we want to inside that rebirth.
Yeah. Yeah, and what is the cost of not participating? Yeah.
Deep question. I think one worth I would say my response is I'm amazed at how that instantly touched a wound when you asked that, of like all the places say that I'm judging myself of all the little things that I notice in my day that I should do better. And then it went to this like giving up. And I think that's often
Mm.
what people do is they give up of like, well, I can't fix what thousands of people are doing, what wars are happening. I can't fix that as an individual. And so as soon as the victimization touches our own personal wound, it can collapse. And so, back to the decomposition, when I can, when time allows, and I feel something like that, I try to, sometimes I take 10 minutes and literally just get on the bed in the fetal position and just feel the like despair of what's coming up. And I think the courage to be an ecstatic isn't just to go into the blissful state where we're high on the universe. It's actually the ecstatic is willing to go into the despair of the universe,
Mhm.
because if we don't cry those tears, we're not going to water the earth. There is a real separation from death and disease and war that we've cultivated. So uh, it's powerful how your single question touched all that just instantly, and I think that's really why we have to ask these deep questions of ourselves and see what
Mhm.
arises and how we're in relationship to it.
Yeah, I love everything that you just said, and makes me think about how important it is for that kind of a message to be shared. We think that if we go into the despair and we go into the emotion that sucks, we're never going to come out. And then we have people, all these coaches and all these people on social media, they're like promising you a certain experience or like to live in this certain state or whatever it is. We've normalized this way of living that isn't, it's not including everything. It's not including all of it. And it's not realistic. And so we're chasing something that's not attainable. And so for somebody like you, who's very connected to your body and has done a lot of inner exploration, to hear somebody like you say that, like I went into my despair and just went into the fetal position. I didn't stay there. I think that's really important.
Mm. And thanks for like amplifying that message of the courage to do that, because you're right. It's not what I actually, about 7 years ago, I got off of social media. It's funny that we even connected because I like literally open it once a blue moon. It's this very rare moment because the constant reflections were rarely showing the wholeness. And that's something that now I'm greedy, back to my jinky, I'm greedy for all of it. I would much rather get into the gritty with someone about what's really happening, not the glamour. And I don't just mean that in the glamorous sense, but glamour is magic, is fey magic. It's the magic of illusion. And we constantly are asked to put on glamour, to put on the right face. And authenticity is such a funny word. One of the main reasons why I even said yes is because I loved your weird. I loved weird. I love that you use the word weird. It's one of my favorite words. And it was just this fascinating discussion of like, what is that authenticity? What is that weirdness? And one of the words that the person who died in my life, she brought that word weird, and she said weird means fated. It has
Mm.
Germanic roots with the
Mhm.
fates and destiny. Before it became odd, and which
Right.
was, of course, a reaction to our witchy truth and the deeper layers. So we're on this destiny, and destiny, of course, includes despair. The threads of fate don't just have all the end. It's not just the end result. And so for me, it was like a removing of some of this rushing to fix, to become, to be the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
and a willingness to just be in the process of the becoming and enjoy it. And I don't mean I'm always happy. Enjoying can include like a good cry can be enjoyed, a good despair. I love it when my purposelessness is one of my shadows. When I just give up on humanity, like there's this inner smile in my despair that's like, yep, that's real too. That needs to be felt. It
Mm-hmm.
needs to be breathed into, or it's not, or it's going to run me on a deep unconscious level.
Yeah.
So thanks for amplifying messages like that. It's really,
Mm-hmm.
it's important.
Yeah. It's a paradox, right? People struggle holding paradox. I think that that's also why this might be difficult to imagine that you can have something like ecstasy and grief like right here at the same time simultaneously. It's very strange. And to go back to the weird thing, tying that into genius, right? Weird to me is like, it's your unique fingerprint of consciousness. It's only you can be that. Only you can be who you are, nobody else. And it's never been done before. No, it's just totally unique. And it's really special. We mask who we are with, our programming and our conditioning, the shadows, whatever, when we're not owning them and integrating them. So, tying this into our genius, Gene Keys, is there anything you want to say about how our genius can help us maybe find our way back to weird,
I
our
love that.
weird?
The unique fingerprint and that piece, and that's genius. My genie us. That's my favorite definition of genie. The genie
Mm,
in us.
mm,
This genius is already inside. We are the genie stuck in the lamp, right? And genius has become this like, oh, highly intelligent people, highly successful entrepreneurs who pioneer a new area. Like that's genius. And Richard has a great definition in the book. He describes it as an innate and spontaneous intelligence that's the base of all human beings. And it emerges when without force. So genius, real genius, comes out of that naturalness that you're describing, that the thing you do when no one's watching, the thing that is like air to you. And unfortunately, we've been told from a young age, no, don't sing, your voice is horrible, or no, you're never going to be, an astronaut. And we're told all these society things that then form the concrete on top of that seed of genius.
mm.
And so it can be a lot harder to just access. And so I think it's so important that there's this relaxing, and weird is such a good compass, because it's like, what did you do that got you made fun of? That there's something magical there, that I think is worth exploring. And it may or may not be that action, but there's probably a thread of that strange, odd, unique caliber of you, because often we're scared of what's different. And yet it's also what entices us. It's the taboo of like, ooh, we come together because we're these different types of people. And I think for me, it's like a practice. I'm an improv musician as well, and I had to practice not judging whatever you play. And there's an incredible musician, Victor Wooten, who writes books and does teachings on this and stuff. But he's like, when we're kids learning to talk, you're jamming with professionals all the time. You're just going blah 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 blah, and your parents are talking fluent English. You're learning through jamming,
Mhm.
and no, unfortunately, some parents, but not all parents are gonna stop you from babbling because you're learning that instrument. And we need more of that courageous openness in certain areas to play music, to make art, to dance your body, to try things that feel good in your body, but feel a bit weird and fated. You're fated to find those weird things about yourself. And if we had more permission, I think, as a society, that it's okay to make mistakes, to learn, to experiment, to pollinate, to try new things, it'd be less odd to be weird. I think it would start to be the natural state of things again.
Yeah, that's so well said. I'm pretty sure you have a track on your website.
Mm-hmm.
That's yours, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I listened to it just before, because I'm like going through your website, just making sure, I know everything that I need to know. There's a part of me that's like, I need to prepare. It's funny. I have a list of questions, haven't asked you any. That's usually what happens. I just go with the conversation. Your music was so beautiful. I feel like it's that music where you listen to it drops you right into your body.
Well, it's flow state, and that was when I was studying brainwave, the mechanics of the brain and the biology of our breath and our brain and these states that we can enter. Then the opposite spectrum, I found music, and I was a, like drumline drummer, Texas, like drumline, and like learned like a structure. Thank God was forced into learning certain structure, but I never felt like I was a musician. And then when I found handpan and this improv music of singing in these particular ways, it was like I was free. And I was so grateful I learned the structure when I was a kid, but I was free to flow. And then now when if I record music and I can enter flow state, of course that's going to entrain flow state in the
Hmm.
person listening. And that's true for all great music and great art is you're receiving the entrainment of that state of genius emerging. And that's
Hmm.
why art moves us is it's like, oh, someone felt something when they put that on the canvas. You could feel, you don't even have to know what they were thinking. In fact, it's sometimes better that you don't, but you can feel the vibration of that resonance of that genius.
Yeah. Do you feel like flow needs structure in order for it to be, integrated's not the word, but maybe more sustainable?
I love structure and flow. I think it's a powerful magical principle. You have the cauldron and then the wild bubbling inside the cauldron. And if you didn't
Hmm.
have the cauldron, the bubbles are just everywhere and you have no potion, right?
Hmm.
So learning some structure, and it depends on the thing. So take music, like learning a little bit of the structure. Handpans, these instruments behind me, they were great because they're one mode musically. So there's really no wrong note. So it gives you freedom to play inside that sphere. And it's the structure of it's always going to hit a note within that key. And then I have the freedom to trust a little bit deeper. So structure, like the banks of the river, they let me relax into, you know what, the instruments got me. Or if you're playing with a good guitarist or a harp player, like I had my friends that were just like such good musicians, that high caliber skill, you can trust in that and then find flow. Which is
Hmm.
why people love to sing together, like in choirs or in song circles or singers' soirees. You have this resonance of the whole field around you that you can trust the ecstasy that's holding you, and then you
Hmm.
can have your experience. And that's where sometimes that brings up things of like, wow, I'm not good enough, or wow, I wish I could practice my voice better to be more on key. And that brings me back to structure. But we have to have a little bit of both, I think, in life.
Hmm.
Absolute flow just feels like it never lands, and that's where I think a little bit of that spiritual bypass happens, or a little bit of that, my moving from West Coast woo-woo to some East Coast ground was like, I'd like a balance between some of that structure and flow,
Yeah.
and that's really where magic happens.
Any wisdom to offer on how to create that balance? I'm thinking of just containment. I've been
Yeah.
speaking to women about this a lot. Women sometimes struggle to create masculine containment for themselves, right? Um, any wisdom on this?
Yeah, that's a really good word. And I do think it is about like having your own back, having your own feeling like you can rest into yourself. Like, even
Mm,
if no one else is going to help me today, and I don't mean with things that we need to ask for support, but even in asking support, to rest into yourself, to know that you've got your own back and practicing that in various ways. I think great ways to do that are in the body, like learning, and it can be any of them. It could be yoga or qigong or dance or like having some way to learn to trust your body a little bit more than you did yesterday, to learn to lean into it a little bit more. And same with art and music. And then emotionally, that's why I love the Gene Keys, is like it gives me a container for my contemplation. so that I see, okay, this week today, I'm just going to look at this gene key and see what happens in my life. That's where contemplation takes place, is in the in-between moments. So the structure isn't that the gene key is going to give me the answer, but the structure gives me the banks to my mind and my emotions to be like, oh, actually, change is happening. It might be very small this week or today, but change is happening because I'm bringing my attention and my attitude to those challenges. And so I would just leave that with like, be patient with yourself. When you want something to really change, if it's worthwhile, it will take time. And to
Mhm.
enjoy, and I use that word very carefully, of like, it doesn't mean to be happy. It means to be enriched by, to enjoy, to be the joy of that becoming. And that takes the container and leads us into that flow, hopefully.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I probably should have asked this in the beginning, but if somebody is like, yeah, I really want to explore the gene keys more or learn about my genius or how to contemplate a shadow or whatever it is, how would you direct them? And I know you do personal sessions too, so maybe what does that look like as well?
Yeah, it's amazing to sit with someone. That's an incredible way to do it, like to work with a Jinkies guide and like get reflection on your chart. But the beauty of the Jinkies is it doesn't require another person, really. It requires you taking a little bit of time to pause and drink in the wisdom and look within. And so one fun way, free way, is join the Pulse. It's a weekly newsletter with the Gene Key audio of whatever's happening in the day astrologically for all of us. And you can just get these 20-minute audios and listen to them and feel the frequency shift from shadow gift to city, and just start noticing what happens in your day to day and how does that start to interact with your life. And then when you're ready, go to the activation sequence or go into your profile. There's all the resources for kind of a step by step journey. But the New to the Gene Keys is a free course right on the homepage. New to the Gene Keys, begin your journey. Take yourself on a date for 3 days of introspection and just notice what synchronicities occur.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'll put any links down below for anyone interested in exploring.
Yeah, you can definitely check out fractaldoors.com. That's my personal website,
Mm.
and art and music and my sessions. When I have the space, I love to do session work with people, and as well as stay tuned for, I think, a very beautiful and fun app coming in the spring for the Gene Keys that will be my heart and soul encoded. So those would be things I'd pitch.
Cool. Great. I'm looking forward to checking that out too. Thank you so much for connecting and being here and anything that you want to share to close off.
Just real gratitude to you, your invitation, your sweet and incredible, articulate vibration in a time that is very chaotic and stupid. Really appreciate a very resonant chamber here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot. All right, Elijah. Thank you.